Hey, Meg.
Hi, Meg. It's nice to see you.
Just so everyone knows, I'm taking out AI note takers because we are not supposed to have them in meetings for the state. Sorry about that. We'll go ahead and get started in just a minute, but if folks want to add their name and affiliation in the chat to get started, please feel free. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. So my name is Annika Lefebvre. I am the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And this is the Distribution and Access Committee meeting for the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council. This call is being recorded and will be posted to the council's website as soon as possible. But I think I'm going to turn it over to the leaders of this committee to give a welcome, and then we'll go from there. Diana, why don't you kick it off?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I just want to welcome each and every one of you to our meeting distribution access. As we move forward with the FSRC, there will be some changes in regards to how long we meet and when we meet, and that will be consistent across the board. And I'll wait until that announcement comes out, but it will be coming up soon. Meg and I both always just welcome each and every one of you guys. We really just love your support that you give us, because the support we get from you guys, we would not be able to do what we have been able to do on a state level. So again, I just want to say thank you. I hope you're enjoying these hot days. And I'll turn it over to Meg.
Thank you, Diana. I'll just extend what you just started. All that Diana said, plus I hope everyone's coming into today's meeting feeling really proud of the work of the subcommittee. We have just found another level over the past year, and even that spurs us into wanting to continue conversation, dialogue, planning, thinking together during the summer. Just knowing that the potency that we've created here on this subcommittee is that we have momentum, and we want to keep that rolling. And I just want to shout out Diana's leadership as such an important piece of what makes that all go. And you've been sitting at the helm of this committee for since inception. So I just want to thank you for your consistent leadership and your strong leadership. And just also everyone give yourselves a pat on the back. It's been a phenomenal report season for the subcommittee. So thank you.
Okay, thank you both. And yeah, this will be, I think, an exciting meeting. I'm just going to do a quick roll call for the voting members of the committee. We know that Diana and Meg are here. Do we have Beth Brewster? Delegate Charkoudian? I saw Anne-Marie Hart Bookbinder. Hi, Anne-Marie. LaMonica Jones?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, LaMonica. Lisa Lackenmeyer? Joe Liu? Nancy Nunn? And Teresa Stahl, I saw, is here.
Yes. Here.
Okay, welcome everyone, and welcome to everyone else too. And I will catch all of you in the chat as well. So as Diana was saying, there have been some FSRC leadership decisions to adjust the meeting schedule to try to be easier on everyone's very busy calendar. And so what the distribution and access and environment and production committees have decided is to consolidate their meetings to be on one day of every month. And so we will be having both committee meetings on the third Thursday of every month moving forward. And we can always revisit this. And please note that that is a typo. It is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., not until 11 p.m. So just 1 hour meetings, as Diana said, beginning July 17th. Any questions about schedule updates? The other thing to note is that the full council won't be meeting again until October 2nd because we have decided to take a little summer break. And then the last thing to highlight is that the co-chair elections are underway. So that is both at the council and committee level. And we've received a lot of votes so far and are excited for all of the thoughtful nominations and all of the candidates for this year's election. So this is the first year that there will be committee elections for co-chairs. And so we really appreciate everything that the committee leaders have done thus far and are excited to see what happens next too. Any questions about any of that stuff? I think I neglected to put it in a slide, but all of the votes have already taken place for the report recommendations, and all of your recommendations received positive support, and it looks like every single one will be submitted to the full council for the report. So congrats to everyone. Well done. A lot of thought went into these recommendations, and I'm excited for the full council to get to read them. And just so for your awareness, this is where we are now. So you've voted to submit your final recommendations to the council. From there, we're going to compile those recommendations from both committees and all of the other pieces of the report and send them out to the full membership of the FSRC on July 8th. After that, members are given a window of time to provide feedback, any corrections, questions, suggestions for changes until July 22nd. And we'll finalize it for you. And then on August 5th is when you will have a deadline to vote for the final publication. So we're pushed back a couple weeks, but are there any questions about this process? I know we go over it all the time, but it always seems like there's another complicated step. So don't be shy if any of this is confusing. Okay, and sorry to those of you who are not appointed council members for having to sit through this little speech of mine. So we wanted, go ahead.
Can I ask you one quick question? Is there anything worth sharing out with the group around the, the process we went through to get state agency buy-in and support for the recommendations? Is there anything did that go smoothly? Any surprises there? Just out of curiosity.
It did go smoothly as far as I can recall. Did you discuss it in your May meeting as well? I can't remember. I think ENP did have the chance to see some of the feedback that they received.
Yeah, we did not.
Oh, okay.
Or unless I missed the meeting, which is possible. So
I definitely missed the meeting, so you would know better than me. Diana, go ahead.
We didn't, but we only had only one recommendation was sent back for us to add, and that was the pop-up pantries. All the other ones that we submitted, as far as I know, no more recommendations came back or anything was said about it.
While we are talking, go ahead, Anne Marie.
I was just going to say that I appreciate that question being raised, because as a first-time voter, it was a little, I was trying to use the checklist, and it was a little difficult for me to know who actually, providing feedback versus did they support it. It was a little challenging for me to figure that out in some of the recommendations. I trusted they were good, but I felt that was one missing piece for me.
Yeah, so thank you, Anne Marie. That's a good question. We created the checklist for the first time this year before you joined the council, just as a way to additionally vet the recommendations. And since this is the first time the council is using it, I think that we've encountered a handful of challenges with that document that we'll have to revisit and correct for the future. And specifically, like whether or not a state agency or other entity endorsed officially a recommendation was a challenging one, because we don't really know how to consistently apply that at this stage of the process. And so all of the state agencies that were named in your recommendations were contacted, and they had the opportunity to read those recommendations. And as far as I know, they all did, and provided feedback, with the exception of Do It on the food system mapping one. However, they assisted with the beta version of that map, with Meg and her team working on that recommendation. And so they are fully aware that that is something that the council is working on. But all of the feedback that was provided has been incorporated into the recommendations that you all received, if that makes sense. That's a good question. Any other questions on that?
No, that's a great update. Thank you.
No,
Okay.
I agree. Will we continue to use this process like we did this year, or are we thinking about anything different?
I would love to throw that back to the group, because this is a new process with the work groups. And in the past, it's kind of just been a group effort that's been a little bit more like volunteer based. And sometimes that has led to just a couple people writing all of the recommendations for the full committee. So this is an entirely new process, but we also wondered if there are ways to hone it in for the future. I think that we at MDEM were very excited to see the amount of collaboration that happened with these recommendations this year, and the amount of external engagement we had with writing them too. Any other reflections on how it went, or suggestions for how we should improve things moving forward? We're all ears, and you have the email address for the council, and it's in the last slide of this too, but would love that feedback. And that's how we make our systems better, is receiving that input from the council members. So thank you.
Yeah, I would just say one thing out loud, that I think that credit to you and the MDEM team, Annika, for creating that initial linkage between FSRC and the state agency that would be the lead or receiving agency of the recommendation, just to put voice to that, and then to create a process whereby the written recommendations go to that agency. I think it clicked, it put a puzzle piece in place for me personally, because I was never really entirely sure how we would go from the written recommendations to a yes to implementation, unless something was particularly of interest to an elected official who picked up on something. So I think you've built a bridge through this process that feels really potent and meaningful. So I really liked it, and it made it feel much more like, made the ideas for me feel much more actionable, because the readers on the agency side are kind of the intended audience. They're part of it, right? So I thought it was really positive. And I didn't have any trouble with adjusting the timeline to make it. You've done an excellent job of helping us navigate the timing. So for me, it was all just a really positive step forward.
Thanks, Meg. And I definitely want to give kudos where it's deserved. Summer Modolfino did all of that state agency outreach for both committees. So way to go, Summer. She was on this call. And then this suggestion came from feedback from the council last year too, after the 2024 report was published. How can there be more alignment at the state level with the recommendations the council is putting out there to create more traction with them? So really the kudos is deserved by all of you council members too. So way to go. Any other thoughts on the report? The big agenda item for today's meeting was to look ahead at the coming months. We are entering at the state level our next fiscal year, FY 2026. So starting in July is when the new fiscal year begins. And okay, Meg, And I wanted to take this opportunity to check in with you, the Distribution and Access Committee, about what you would like to see happen over the coming months and where your next priorities lie. So here are some guiding questions for this discussion. Which topics covered in the past year need to be revisited or require additional information? Are there any issues that DNA requires additional subject matter expertise on, like outside speakers? What outreach activities would be most helpful for advancing your report recommendations? Those are a few questions. I also, in the upcoming slides, have a teaser, which is I pulled out your committee activities from the bylaws that were passed last year to kind of reflect on how far you've come with those activities that you've preset for yourselves, and see where you might want to go next. But any reactions to these questions right off the bat? Diana?
I'm not going to respond to any of the questions that you submitted right now, but I do want to just bring it to the floor about the climate that we're in right now, and what are some of the things that are really going to be affected. And I think that we need to start looking at those things sooner than later. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, but I'm really, really concerned. I know there's a statewide freeze on employment. The vacancies of jobs are going to be eliminated on the state. We do have this issue with the SNAP benefits. We do have this issue with Medicaid and Medicare. And what will that look like as a state? And I'm afraid if we don't address it now, we're going to be into another pandemic, because there will be a food shortage. So the food prices are going up. So as distribution and access from a state level, I think it would be imperative for us to start looking at those issues sooner than later. And that's all.
Thank you, Diana. I think that a lot of agreement is happening here, and that is very good food for thought for the coming conversation. So this is just a teaser of many slides ahead in this presentation, but I just wanted to share these activities that you set for yourselves last fall and voted on, and see where there are areas that you might want to look to for the coming year. I highlighted some that I thought might be of interest, but I'm not assigning you anything. I just wanted to help pick a few things out. So if something is not highlighted, it's because my personal opinion was that you've made good strides with those areas. So this first one, goal 1.1, coordinating state and local level food insecurity services to support residents of the state. I thought you might be interested in pursuing gaps in services and exploring partnerships to improve access to food distribution resources. Are there any other thoughts on how you've done with these activities so far and whether you'd like to pursue them further? Teresa, go ahead.
I agree. I think that is what we are trying to do for sure. And with the mapping, especially, that's one thing that will help. With that, I'm thinking that. So I know we do want to continue to pursue that. And to add to what Diana said, I was going to raise my hand and say the same thing, because I feel like there's so many questions ahead of us, and things are changing so fast, but they're all increasing. It seems that they're all increasing the food needs. So I think that is a priority. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Shannon?
So I will note that I am on 2 hours of sleep because I came back from Seattle last night on the red eye. But I was at the ReFed conference, and I had a lot of discussions with various different corporations. Meg, I'm definitely going to follow up with you some questions that I had while I was there. But one of them that I really explored a lot with folks from Harvard Law Public Policy is that Bill Emerson Good Samaritan donation and the tax benefits associated with those as well, and really amplifying that. And I know this was a discussion we had throughout this past year on what kind of recommendations are associated with this and how to promote it more. And I think that overall, this definitely needs to continue to surface with intention, just because there's just any retailer I go to, the individual stores still struggle with that understanding of what's allowed to be donated and what is not, just based off of the historical, no, we can't do this. And I think that this needs to continue to be explored in the various different layers of not just retail, but other partnerships across the state. And that's federal, so like doesn't have that, weight that we do at the state.
Thanks, Shannon. And I think that would be a good way to build on this year's recommendation too. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving for time's sake. The next one was tracking and analyzing data to create a comprehensive map of food insecurity across the state and identifying gaps in service. So as I just mentioned, you all made great strides in doing this year, but I know that Meg's team certainly and others are still interested in getting current data and making sure that that is available in an accessible way. And so some of the things that you previously thought about doing were coordinating with local food councils to do that on the ground work of identifying gaps and collecting data, and promoting state level data collection and analysis to track food insecurity and food system equity statewide. So any thoughts on this one, the mapping one? Yes, no, if this is something you want to pursue in the coming months, or do you feel like you need a map break?
There's no break from mapping. It doesn't work that way, right? We wish it did, but I'm just looking at this and just feeling like, how do we take these things that feel like they're evergreen and they never change and they never get any better and bring the right people around the table so that we can understand, because we have these things. They're already out there. We may not be fully connected and integrated around them, but it exists. So how do we, as a council that meets virtually, every so often, it feels like it needs an on the ground workshop, like the event that you put together, Shannon. Something like where we're bringing together the data, food system data folks, anyone who's interested or touches that issue, and share, again, I don't know how to produce that concept, take that idea and make it into an actual thing, but that's the missing piece, because the work's being done, people are trying to connect and collaborate all the time. It just never, there's no finish line. So you never feel like, oh, we have it now, nor will we ever feel like we have it. But how do we change the narrative is, I guess, what I'm getting to, from this, sort of a deficit framework to an abundance framework of like, look at all these things we have and look at this network of people who are doing this work, and we all know how to reach each other. So not a full answer there, but
Teresa,
thoughts.
I'm sorry. Meg, can I ask you this question? Would this be something that could be explored in a hackathon?
It maybe. I mean, it's the right, I think a design sprint or some kind of like a workshop or something, because it's about connecting people, and it's about connecting people who really understand the data. So it's not like it's when we did the map, for example, DeWitt found all these data layers inside ArcGIS. And then you put them in front of people who really know the data, and they're like, those aren't really the right data layers, right? So you need the experts to be saying like this, yes to this, that no. So you need like the practitioners and the subject matter experts in the room. But I love the idea of a short time frame, kind of bringing people together with a clear objective. So hackathon approach, yes, maybe not like a tech build or just looking for data sets, because I think it's broader. Some parts of it are broader than that.
And the reason I was asking that really specifically is because we're trying to MD is looking to figure out the next food summit and like what are the intentions and what are the different programs that should be present for the newest information and not just rinse, wash, repeat. But then on the concept of the different types of data sets and the value that they offer and where that is, could there be a front end university supported evaluation across all of the data sets and that's why I said like a hackathon almost activity, but then have those presentations of that in a workshop that's maybe a 2-hour long workshop with those other entities present to see the data frames that they've come up with.
Yeah, I think that I love the idea of seeding this in your event in some way, shape, or form. And I think maybe this could be work of the subcommittee is to identify who should be around, who should be at the table for that, who are the subject matter experts, who has the best data, who's using the data to inform, and then building that list out really carefully. And I think the work group that we had together, which included DeWitt and Juan Cruz from Montgomery County, we had some really good, knowledgeable people around the table. Daniel Sturm from our organization. I know Joe was on it from Capital Area, and I know they have a great team there that's got their hands in the data all the time. So I think that could be something, but I think that would be a real value add to you had a really good event, Shannon, and a really good turnout. And so to take it and give it this little sort of special session at the top and that becomes a workshop sounds like a great idea.
I like that idea also, simply because I think it needs to come. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things and a lot of conversation about mapping. Even here in Anne Arundel County, when I just had a food council meeting, and that's what they're talking about is mapping. And I sometimes it's hard to say, wait a minute, we're reinventing the wheel without saying we're reinventing the wheel. So I think there's a lot of conversation and no one's on the same page of how it should be implemented and what's going on and what has already happened.
I know in the interest of time, Annika, I know you're going to move forward and that's why, but here in the thread, we'll move forward.
Sounds good. I know we're on a shorter time frame today. We're trying this out for distribution and access, and I have lots to talk to you about, so sorry. This next one, leveraging federal and private sector grants and other resources to address food insecurity needs. So grant funding and technical support opportunities are things that this committee has not talked too much about in like a very formal way. To the best of my recollection, maybe I'm incorrect, but is this something that you see as a priority for the committee in the coming months? Thoughts on this? Anne Marie, go ahead.
I was thinking just before that I apologize if we did and I missed it, but I don't think that we ever discussed the enough grants in this space. And I know that at least in Montgomery County, the ones that organizations in our county received, there is a food security, component that they are looking at. And I think we're really curious to see if something like that, that a really holistic approach for addressing systemic poverty, because we know it doesn't happen in a vacuum, like really, is something that should be on our radar and, possibly advocating for more of those types of grants in the future.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Something that occurred to me as you were saying that was maybe it could be a regular or semi-regular part of meetings just to do a call out to grant opportunities that committee members know about. Would that be a way of addressing this one? I don't know.
I think so. I know that at the leadership meeting we had recently, they said that we get too many emails. But I think the emails in regards to grant opportunities are very good for especially the local food councils.
So maybe the local food councils can keep sharing those grant opportunities with each other. Okay, moving along. advising the state on how best to allocate resources and increase efficiency. So reviewing impact and scope of current food assistance programs and providing recommendations for optimizing resource allocation based on data-driven insights are two activities you were considering last fall to address this one. Any thoughts on this? One thing that occurred to me as I was chatting with a few council members yesterday is that I don't think that WIC has had a deep dive with this committee in a while, and that could be an interesting topic to look at. Any other thoughts?
I'm just looking for a slight unpack on 1.4.3. Recommendations to optimize allocations based on data-driven insights. That's a jam-packed sentence. I'm not sure what those data-driven insights are to start with. So how could they drive the rest of that recommendation? I don't understand that. I can't, in my head, I can't turn that into an activity or response. So I'm just personally struggling with that, the language on that.
It kind of makes me think that we need to make progress with the map one and all of that data collection.
That's what it feels like to me as well. Like that's the cornerstone.
Okay, moving along. 1.5, I thought you did a great job with your recommendation on CEP this year. You had a very robust meeting on it in the fall. Do you think that there are things that still need to be addressed in this one? Explore the role of and potential use for the federal community eligibility provision to ensure all students in the state are fed. I think an ongoing conversation, of course, makes sense. But you've also done a tremendous amount of work in this space in the last 12 months too. Thumbs up from Diana. Okay, we're moving along. I highlighted a lot in this one because I think it is a ongoing important topic, addressing and eliminating racial inequalities in the food system. There are many in here. One that stood out to me as an interesting one was that 1.5, sharing information gleaned from engaging with community forums and residents in underserved neighborhoods. So are there activities that the committee could be doing to do more of that on the ground community engagement with Marylanders? That's one thought I had. Any other ideas?
I'll just say that again, I think this one in particular is a great connection for the Enough grants because there's just so much community engagement as part of that process.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm glad this one you highlighted so much on here, Annika, because as I was reflecting on past year, I feel like this is a topic that we haven't spent enough time on. We haven't spent enough time on systemic racism in our food system and how that shows up today. And so I support digging back into 2.1. I think we had a really good session early on last year, and I can't remember the person who presented on the impact of racial inequality and inequity on the food system. I think there's a learning opportunity for this subcommittee, and I think there's also an opportunity to start to build some consensus amongst ourselves around then what do we do? What are our recommendations based on our shared knowledge? And I do think some of them, like geographic areas and communities lacking, we know that we have maps to look at for that already. We can do a presentation there. So some of these are relatively straightforward, but I think just the larger, we haven't really, this is like a rail that we haven't really fully touched, is really focusing on race and inequity, and that is a big part of this subcommittee. So I think for me, this I would vote with this to be an area of focus for next year.
I totally agree with Meg, and I think as we move forward, we're going to see more inequalities, not especially in our food system, but across the board. So we're going to have to stay on top of it.
I think something that really resonated with me in listening back to the Environment and Production Committee meetings when they were talking about their recommendation process this year was they highlighted in that checklist form all of the racial equity and DEI type criteria that we put into the form. And something that someone said was that a lot of this kind of work is implicit in the recommendations that you are writing, but there's not so much of a direct call out in those recommendations. And so that's something that I wonder if there's a way to incorporate that too into your work over the next few months. Moving us along. Oh, yeah, thank you, Anne Marie. Address and eliminate diet-related public health disparities. So we had a fantastic Food is Medicine Lunch and Learn in December that the recording totally failed on, and we didn't get to retain that to share with other audiences later on, which was unfortunate. But is there interest for this committee to look more at diet-related health disparities in Maryland and more directly address some of those topics this year?
I'll just share one thing that I thought was really interesting was the discussion on the new, I'm going to say, is it GLP-1? And the amount of excess food that's being generated now because people are just not buying materials and foods anymore, and there's more to go to waste on this, and it's something that the system is looking at as a whole.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I also thought that was interesting. Other thoughts? No other thoughts right now. Okay, I know we have a handful of dietitians in this call too, so please feel free to help us out if you think of anything. Teresa.
Well, I definitely think that the food is medicine is extremely important, and I don't think I hopefully that area will be growing as far as Medicare coverage or Medicaid coverage and the program possibilities, because I think there is more widespread acceptance that food is the best place to start. So I think, just continuing to have speakers and maybe, there's programs that are food is medicine covered under Medicare and Medicaid. And then there's other programs that provide food as medicine. Like we have one at the hospital in my community that the hospital itself is paying for people with diabetes that have an A1C over 8. So they are participating in a program that isn't an insurance-based program necessarily. So there's kind of those two areas in the food as medicine. So I think finding out, I'm curious what's happening federally with funding in government programs like Medicare and Medicaid, or at the state level for food as medicine. So maybe a speaker. But I definitely think we should stay on top of that because that is a valuable resource of food for people.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And I'll say that Joe Liu and his work group wrote a really robust description of their food as medicine work that they did this spring for the committee's summary in the report. And so I think that you're not alone in wanting to continue to pursue that. Okay, addressing and eliminating food deserts. This is old in our bylaws because it is now healthy food priority areas in your statute, and we can change this in the bylaws. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Exploring strategies to incentivize grocery stores and food retailers to operate in Maryland's healthy food priority areas. So this is one that you may recall was highlighted by the Maryland General Assembly this year as being of interest, specifically with regard to supermarkets and brick and mortar grocery stores and food retailers. I don't know if there is anything you want to touch on here. I know we discussed this in this version of the discussion last year, and something that several people voiced was how complicated of an assignment that is, just because it is really hard to get inside the strategy of like corporate grocery stores and make it a more marketable, more economically competitive option for them to move into healthy food priority areas. Any thoughts on this one? I know that yesterday some council members talked about focusing more on corner stores or independent grocers as a better way to approach this kind of strategy.
I think this is a hard strategy to address. It's simply because of what you said. And when we were on the meeting on the other day, a lot of stores don't desire to go into the healthy food priority areas for whatever reason. So I don't know. I just think this is a hard one.
Nancy?
So I just have a question. I'm wondering, looking at this one, if that might also tie in with some of the other recommendations, such as pop-up markets or, a truck or whatever. I mean, does it have to be bricks and mortar all the time, or are there opportunities to think outside the box?
Nancy, I think that's an excellent suggestion. And a matter of fact, that was something we talked about at a meeting that we had previously about pop-ups. We've seen them and we know that they're successful. Maryland Food Bank used to be pantries on the go and would do them all the time. And they well attended. People were happy because they could select their own fruits and vegetables. So that's another way of addressing this.
Meg, was there something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just dropped a link in the chat and I put a paragraph from the story article from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Somebody posted this on LinkedIn a few months ago. I had no idea that there was a policy shift that happened in the 80s that essentially decimated independent grocery stores. And it was such a, I was mind blown. I didn't know that. And I know a lot about the food system. And so I wonder, and I haven't really read the article carefully, but I wonder whether there's a policy idea that sits in there. It's about allowing what happened, I think, at a high level was the grocery stores started to be able to collectively buy. And so it lowered their costs to the point where independent grocers couldn't compete, and then they went out of business. It was a policy change out of DC that had implications in communities across the country. And so maybe there's something in there that, along with the kind of things that Diana just mentioned, there is a policy recommendation, some kind of protection for independent grocery stores that protects their buying power so that they don't get priced out. Because that's part of what you're going with Annika too, like the psychology, it's the business strategy and psychology of the large retail grocers. But there's an inequity there. The independents can't keep up, and that's not like those things that have to do with systemic inequity. It's not an accident. There was actually a change coming out of DC that put a hand on the scale that helped the big grocers expand and the independents. It made it harder for them to succeed. So I would recommend reading this. Maybe we could even have someone speak from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I'm not an expert on this, but I was really found the article very good. So.
Thanks, Meg. That's a great call out. LaMonica?
So responding to both Meg and Diana, I appreciate Meg for putting that in the chat. There's several pieces of policy that DC has worked on to kind of address that because of the high number of smaller footprint stores that are in the district. And so I think it's something to look forward to for Maryland. So, DC has the supermarket incentive tax, which was revised following the pandemic to make sure that there is a tax incentive specifically for our Black and minority owned grocery stores that were coming into the district. And I think that is something that can be modeled specifically in high areas. I know we've had that conversation with in other parts of the state. Like I had an intro conversation with Senator McCray about how we can possibly look at that in Baltimore City. And so I think that's something that we could think through as well. Also, there was a food access fund that was funded through ARPA funding, though. And that again went to food-based businesses doing something specific. The Healthy Corners debate and kind of conversation is something that is popping up in a lot of different spaces and has something that has been successful. It's just that corner stores do need a lot of support in terms of that, because they are small businesses. It's not like our larger stores. So they do need some more support in terms of becoming a SNAP retailer, becoming a WIC retailer. And I think those are spaces for us to study and to look into and to have conversations about what are the specific needs. So like for corner stores, making sure that they're able to take SNAP as a SNAP match, and then working with our CBOs that are, using that grant funding to allocate directly to our corner stores, and start with modeling it in specific high need areas first before we kind of launch it out widely. But it is something that has worked. And when you layer it with WIC and just being a SNAP retailer, it has been successful, because, the goal is to make sure that wherever folks are going in the community to the corner store, whatever it is that they're getting, we just want to make sure there's an access point for fresh foods. And a lot of times, if I'm going there for whatever reason and I can pick up a healthy food option, or if I know that this is a store that focuses on SNAP matching, maybe they're also a WIC retailer. And so if I need to pop in between to get something, I can utilize my WIC benefits here, then, we want to make sure that we have that set up. So I think it's something we're studying and having a conversation with our grocery retailers about what type of support they need. With the corner store owners that I've talked to, sometimes the challenge is not participating in these programs. The challenge is the other items in my store are not moving. And so you're utilizing your benefits for formula, for example, but the other items are not moving in my store, and that becomes a concern. So I think it's worth entertaining a conversation with, if we wanted to start with a population of store owners, to have that conversation. But these are strategies that I know have worked, and they have worked to make sure that we create access points outside of our larger big box stores that most folks are accustomed to shopping in.
Thank you so much, LaMonica. Teresa? Teresa, you're muted.
Yeah.
Making it easier for us corner stores to accept WIC. That's a policy at a federal level. And then what I was putting my hand up about was, there is a grocery store in Hagerstown that was a joint venture between the hospital and the city and Horizon Goodwill. And it was like in an area that was very underserved. There was actually a grocery store there that closed because of those changes you were talking about, Meg, that, made it so that small chains weren't able to exist in certain areas. And so then Horizon Goodwill put in a grocery store, and I don't have any updates on it whatsoever, but it was started in response to a need to have a grocer in a high healthy food priority area. So that might be, something to explore for a speaker, or maybe put a couple speakers on this topic together, and maybe that would be one to pursue.
I think that's a great suggestion. And Diana, did I see your hand raised?
You did. I just wanted to go back to what LaMonica was saying. It goes back to the meeting we were having previously, Annika, when we were talking about the WIC regulations, that a lot of corner stores had to have so much stock on hand to meet the regulations, so they had a lot of waste. So again, not only talking to the corner stores, but also maybe talking to WIC to see if we can get some of that changed.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. And I've already done a little bit of reach out to MDH to see if they can help us with that topic. So more to come. Moving us along, goal 2.4, reducing food waste, increasing recycling, and encouraging other relevant environmental impacts. I think Shannon won't like that I didn't highlight this one, but is there anyone wanting to talk about this? I know that food date labels was something of interest for both distribution and access and environment and production. And I think that that has ended up in both committees, like parking lot for now.
I mean, just a little bit of an update. The DevCo just opened a new organics recycling center that accepts palletized food. So one of the things they couldn't do before was take anything that was on pallet, and now they can. They have a separate facility that will break that down, put it into a transport something or other, and take it over to the anaerobic digester. So I think that, you know, even just keeping pace with progress, things that make it easier to donate wasted food, wasted food. Things like that seem like something that we could pretty easily lift up and share out through this group and through the full council. And then maybe, I'm sure, Shannon, you have other things like that that you put on that list. But I think this is something that's important. We should keep a light touch on it. I wouldn't want to not touch.
Yeah, I was honestly, all I would say is I'm really been focused on seeing how the implementation of the, I said in the presentation on the day labeling and kind of seeing how that manifests. I mean, with 1/5 of the global economy, like I'm really curious to see how much that trickles down to all of the day labels across the nation. So again, still following through with like very focused to watch that implementation piece.
Anne Marie.
I think I would just add here the importance that this group brings to the subject about, you know, making sure what is the, you know, like are we treating food assistance providers and the, you know, the residents who access their services, you know, with dignity, meeting their needs, you know, are they, you know, are we prioritizing, you know, nutritionally, you know, sound products? Are we you know, encouraging, you know, cultural relevance, you know, just making sure that the foods that we're rescuing and providing are the foods that people actually want, you know, and that are best for their health, and that we're not incentivizing, you know, all kinds of pickup and all kinds of, you know, Shannon's heard me before in times past about, you know, just making sure we're not turning food assistance providers into dumping grounds for things that they don't want or have the capacity to then get rid of if it's not high quality. And again, the dignity of people who are accessing those products.
Thanks, Anne Marie. That's a great point. And I think that something that Meg said too made me want to say out loud that I think that this particular strategy or activity has place in a lot of the other parts of what we've talked about so far. Like there can be opportunities for reducing wasted food in many of these conversations, not just right here. Any final thoughts on this one? We're almost done. We're in the Food Council's stage 1, providing coordination and facilitation of knowledge exchange at the state level. So you wrote a great recommendation for this year's report on local food councils, including improving coordination between those local food councils, and the FSRC is already doing awesome work in this space in coordination with the Communication and Coordination Committee. Any thoughts on this? Thanks. Meg is putting helpful resources in the chat. And this one is supporting identification and application of grants to operating funds to support existing and new food council organizations as needed. So more on funding and more on supporting local food councils. Is there anything regarding local food councils that this committee would like to address? Knowing that there is crossover with CNC as well. Okay, I think we touched on almost all of these. So these are topics that last year were suggested and may not have been covered over the last few months. I think that there was a call out for additional conversation regarding Maryland market money and what's next for that program. But I believe you all may have had more in-depth conversations about that with everything going on with Maryland market money in this year's legislative session. But we talked about these other two already. And we've talked about these as well. Any other ideas, things that we didn't talk about that you would like to see happen in this committee? Okay, does anyone have any updates that they would like to share in our last few minutes of this call? Thank you, Teresa. Okay, well, I thought this was a very helpful conversation, and I think we'll set the stage for the coming months, and we can set up a lot of great conversations moving forward. Any final thoughts? Diana, Meg, you want to say anything?
No, I'm good. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and thanks for this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Annika.
Thank you.